Hey Crossroads, Ben Sander here with your devotion for the day. It comes from Genesis 45:3. Now before we dive into it, I just want to give you just a brief backstory of Joseph. When Joseph was a young man, if not an adolescent, he was very favored by his father. So much so that it made his 11 brothers incredibly envious of him, to the point they were driven mad to the point of wanting to kill Joseph. So they plotted against him and eventually decided to sell him into slavery instead. Why not make a buck? So Joseph is sold into slavery, winds up in Egypt, and through a whole different set of circumstances, he ends up finally becoming second in command of the entire country of Egypt. Just a fascinating story and read. And so there ends up being this famine in all of the region, not just Egypt, all around, and it forces Joseph's brothers to come down to Egypt to buy grain. Now, they didn't know that Joseph was second in command or even that he was in Egypt. And so let's start there. Joseph said to his brothers, "I am Joseph. Is my father still living?" But his brothers were not able to answer him because they were terrified at his presence. Then Joseph said to his brothers, "Come close to me." When they had done so, he said, "I am your brother Joseph, the one that you sold into Egypt. And now do not be distressed and do not be angry with yourself for selling me here, because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you. For 2 years now there has been famine in the land, and for the next 5 years there will be not plowing and reaping. But God sent me ahead of you to preserve for you a remnant on the earth and to save your lives by a great deliverance." Joseph viewed things very, very differently than I think maybe you or I would have. I don't know that, but knowing myself, I would have thought, revenge would have been on my mind. Now, I follow Christ, and I try not to take revenge on those, but it certainly probably would have been some anger with me for what my brothers had done to me. But Joseph saw it differently. He's like, you know what? I am absolutely here for a purpose. It was divinely orchestrated. What you had intended for evil, God has made for good. And it's because I'm here that I'm able to save our entire family line. So there's a lesson for us in that. I believe that God is in the details, maybe even more so than we're comfortable with at times. I mean, you think about that, it's like God sent him through utter darkness to come out to light on the other end. And Joseph remained faithful through it all. And I believe even if this hadn't happened, Joseph would have remained faithful to the end, because his end game wasn't the prosperity that came with being the second in command. It was about honoring God and what he wanted. And I think that's what our lives need to be about. That's kind of the devotional, the thought for the day. And the encouragement comes in the idea that, you know what? God is in the details of what's going on in our lives right now. You know what? It may be uncomfortable. It may not be fun. It may just downright stink. But take comfort in the fact that knowing that God is in control. He's in the details. He cares about you dearly. He knows what's going on. He hasn't forgotten you, and he loves you. So stay faithful. And guys, until the next video, we love you.